Righty, I think we're gonna begin this evening. Again, thank you so much for coming, everyone. I appreciate it. And this is our kickoff for the 2025-2026 Audubon's bird presentations or speaker series presentations. So I'm really excited for this year. We've got lots of things going on, and we're going to go over a lot of stuff. So, Marianne, if we're going to do a little, I can't remember which, how's that? Is that okay for everybody? Okay, lovely. Good. So let's go to the next slide, please. That's me. Next. All right. So I'm going to be mentioning a lot of this stuff here, hopefully pretty quickly. I'm also going to be speaking for Drina, who has another board meeting tonight, and Amanda, who is our coffee coordinator, who is unable to get here on certain Tuesdays. All right. So first bullet point, next, is membership renewal time. For those who have renewed their membership or are new members, thank you so much. Somehow I feel like a public radio person when I'm this way, but this is what we are able to do our special programs, do our conservation things is with the funds that we get from you and donations and other things. We also would like for you to volunteer for some things as well, too. It could be, well, we'll have something that I'm going to pass around and be up on the screen that you might be interested in. So please think about membership, talk to friends about membership, and you can either go online, toss me some money tonight is fine too, or send it at when it's convenient for you. Next, please. All right, so a couple of items of interest. These are not volunteer things, but if you'd like to go on Sunday, September 21st from 10 to 2, Creekside Collaborative, which is West Creek Conservancy, along with Stearns Farm and a couple of other organizations that collaborate. They are having a native plant sale. They raise the plants right in their little hoop houses and greenhouses. They're all native plants, primarily perennials, grasses, sedges, trees, shrubs. I've helped to transplant some of those, and I think they died. No, no, everything's thriving. So it's really a lot of fun to see what they have to offer, and the prices are so reasonable. But go ahead and check out their website, again, westcreek.org, and then the Creekside Collaborative plant sale. That'll list all the different plants that they do have for sale. And it's in Parma, so one of the side streets in Parma, easy to find, right by Stearns Homestead. Next, please. Another event in which you might be interested is the Headlands Birding Festival. That is Friday, September 19th through Sunday, September 21st. Yes, it does overlap with that plant sale. However, there are speakers, birding tours, pelagic trips, events, all kinds of stuff. But note, some programs may already be sold out. So you may want to, certainly you do want to check their site, the Friends of Headlands Beach, the Birding Festival 2025, for more information, find out what's available, what still might have some room. So again, a fun thing. Next, please. And we're really excited about this. Our organization has partnered with the Cuyahoga County Public Library, the Parma Powers branch, which is right by University Hospital there in Parma. Used to be called Parma Hospital. And there are 12 of the 2024 prize-winning photos. There you can see they're large photos. And serendipitously, when I went to talk with the library in Parma, they said September was going to be a celebration of birds. How about that? So they welcomed these photos. That's myself and Drina putting them up. And but we also are doing some programming for the library. On Mondays, there will be, I will be doing a program, and it's all in the newsletter, by the way. I'll be doing a program this coming Monday, so next Monday. We'll be having a photography program by Michelle and a couple of other photographers. That's what is the date? The 15th. And then I'll be doing another program on the birds that are represented in the photos. And then one of our other members, Sierra, is going to be doing a family and children's program on a Saturday. So we have, again, lots of things going. Plus, there are other organizations and other folks coming in to talk about birds and for that whole celebration of birds event site theme. Check out the CuyahogaLibrary.org, and that will list all the different programs that they will be offering. You have to go through all the different library branches, but you'll find it. You guys are smart. And you do have to register through the library for any of the programs. So just be aware of that. Don't register through us, must register through the library. Okay, next. And volunteer opportunity. Look at that cute little fishy. That, you know what that is, right? Lake sturgeon, look at that. Yes, and we've been asked, our organization has been asked to have a display at Sturgeon Fest, which is on October 4th from 1 to 4. And so we'll need a couple of volunteers to staff our table. We'll have a tent up for rain or shine. The park will provide us with tables and chairs. And we'll have something like what we have at our back table, some information, a little bit of a game for our bird identification. And so it should be fun. And I am going to be passing around a sign-up sheet. So if you are interested, this will go around. And if it comes back to me in 1 second, that means nobody signed up. But I hope so you think about it. Oh, by the way, look what else is in there. Yeah. Yeah. Too bad sturgeon don't eat them. They should have taken that out, don't you think? But I think that's kind of interesting. Yep. We also would like to have some volunteers as writers for our newsletter, maybe a book review, a place that you visited, the life history of a particular bird that you like. We could use some photographers on some of our walks, especially like the Tremont Walk, which is the 4th Saturday of the month. Taking photographs, not necessarily of the birds we see, but, you know, scenes of the city, people walking, us as a group. It's just, yeah, we need some volunteers and many, many other things that we can, you can help with. So these are just a few. Contact me if you're interested in volunteering. Yes, you too, Zoomers. Don't hide there. All righty. Next. And maybe you've kind of kept track of our Purple Martin project. The Purple Martin house that you see there was set up at the Cuyahoga County Fairgrounds. It fared well, no pun intended. We had Martin decoys on it. We had the dawn song playing. And in mid-June, a couple of subadult Martins showed up, yay, for a couple of days. Yeah, and then they left. So I don't know if they came back for Oktoberfest, but no, they're pretty much gone now. So we're really preparing the house for winter. It's I've taken the gourds off. I've lowered the house, I cleaned it up a little bit. I want to cover it, and we'll get Martins in the spring, right? Yes, all right. So I want to be a landlord for the Martins. And again, we can always use volunteers for this project as well, too. So if you're interested, stay tuned. Next. And of course, keep informed either through our e-newsletter, sign up for that, and certainly become a member. As a member, you can get information electronically. If you want to get our newsletter sent to you by mail, there's a little upcharge for that. So yeah, because the postage and printing. Okay. All righty. Well, again, I think that's all I have. And I think, yeah, Michelle's next.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hi. All right. So I just want to mention really quick, we have 8 Zoomers with us and they cannot hear us if we're not using a mic. So if you have any questions or want to speak during the presentation or after with the Q&A, raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you so that the Zoomers can hear your question. And likewise, Zoomers, your audio will go through the speaker. So if you come off mute, we'll all be able to hear you. That's why I'm keeping you all on mute for right now to eliminate background noise during the presentation. All right, so I'm going to talk about our upcoming bird walks and how you can connect with us on social media. All right, we have our second Saturday bird walk coming up on September 13th at 9 a.m. We meet at the Rocky River Nature Center parking lot between the upper and lower parking lots and then take a few hours to walk the Nature Center trails. Don't do that. Our lead. I did, I turned it off. All right, we'll try this one. And I'm doing something different this year. I decided to include a QR code that links to the calendar event. So if you're interested in any of these, just hold up your phone and it'll connect you right to the event. You can add it to your calendar or whatever you want to do. All right, we have our last evening bird walk of the season coming up on September 17th at 6 p.m. We are meeting at Fowles Marsh at the sledding hill off Angle Road. Nancy Howell and Al Rand are our leaders for that walk. And I'm really excited about this one. We're going to have a bug walk with naturalist Judy Semrock, and that's taking place September 20th at 1 p.m. Afternoon tends to be really good for the bugs. They like to come out when it's warm. Now we are taking registrations for this one, $10 per person. We have to keep a limited number of people for this walk and recoup some of Judy's fee. So $10 per person, please. The leader is Judy. And you can connect to the event with that QR code and purchase your ticket. I think I didn't check today, but as of yesterday, we still have 11 tickets left. And then finally, the Tremont Towpath Urban Bird Walk, September 27th. This month, it's at 8 a.m. Usually it's at 9, but we're scheduling this month a little early to avoid an event that's happening that same day. We meet at the Towpath Public Parking Lot on Abbey Avenue. Nancy Howell and Al Rand are our leaders for that walk as well. And then finally, follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube. All right, that's it for me. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thanks so much, Michelle. Appreciate it. And as I mentioned, Drina Nemes, who is our book discussion coordinator, couldn't be here this evening. We are in season 6 of our book discussions. And when Michelle gets a chance, there you go. So these are the books that were chosen for this year, I guess our membership year. So October 21st, we will be having Close to Home by Thor Hansen. Thor Hansen's books, we've done a couple of them already. I think we're in love with Thor. First of all, he's a very good writer, easy to read, easy to understand. And again, this is in our newsletter and our website. Then in January, we are going back in time to one of the original of the biggest year with Roger Torrey Peterson and James Fisher. Wild America, that's a different cover. I have one of the originals in my possession. And if somebody wants to borrow it to read, because they are difficult to find, I think you have to get them through like a booksellers. So you can't find them at the library. So
There are also used copies available
Yep.
on Amazon
Right.
and eBay.
Yep. All righty. So that we're going to do that one in January, and then in April we will be returning to Wild America with Scott Weidensall, and he takes the same route and a nice comparison of the two. I have not reread the original Wild America. I'm going to have to do that soon just to remember what was happening because it was published in 55. So that was a little while ago. Next, please. Yeah, so look at that. So it's the 70th anniversary, and there's the, of course, Roger Torrey Peterson. Everybody knows Mr. Peterson's field guides, and again, one of the originators of doing photos or drawings with points to focus on, such as the rose-breasted grosbeak. Hey, look at that on the male's chest, and look at the female's head, and da, da, da. So this is kind of again, really interesting information, and we'll see what their big year was like and compare it with Scott Weidensall's big year in a later book. Next. And of course, Thor Hansen, like I say, we're in love with Thor. Very, very readable. He does really, he invites you to explore something that's very, very close. Let me give you an example. In my backyard, I had monarch caterpillars, and I was watching one feeding, went on the milkweed plant. First thing that caterpillar did was bite the petiole, the little stem that attaches the leaf to the stem, to the main stem, bite it, and the leaf drooped. Then it went down the leaf and chewed a couple of places along the main rib where the latex, the juices would be flowing, and then went to the tip and started feeding. Why did it do that? Does anybody know? Does anybody raise monarchs, and has anybody ever seen that behavior? I am guessing that it will maybe kind of slow down the flow. So while it's eating, then that latex, the sap that comes out is not gushing into their mouths. I don't know. I haven't researched it yet, but I thought, oh, that's an interesting thing right in my backyard. So again, you don't even need a backyard. You could have a patio. You could go into a park and notice all kinds of things. So this is the kind of stuff he talks about, and which I think is a fabulous way to look at nature. Next. And he has his own website, as you can see. And you can also watch a video of him discussing close to home the book that we will be reading. Next, please. There it is. So Tuesday, October 21st, 7 o'clock. It is via Zoom. So please register, or don't even have to register. Just please link in, and that information will be sent to all of our members. Will be in our e-blast as well, too. All right, next. And as I mentioned, Amanda is not available today, but next, please. She is our coffee coordinator, and we order coffee 4 times a year from Birds and Beans Coffee. We don't believe they've increased their prices a whole lot, if at all. So the next order is going to go in on October 10th, but if you could have your orders in by midnight, October 9th, then immediately on the 10th, Amanda will be sending that order in. It's good coffee. There's lots of different roasts and grinds and sizes of bags that you can order. So please check our website, Bird Friendly Coffee Club. I have some little cards at the back table. Pick up some of those. and hand them out to friends as well. So please, you will enjoy. Who does order coffee from us here? Yeah, couple of folks do. Wonderful. All right, next, please. All right. I'm really excited about, again, our speaker season this evening as well as next month. In October, Harvey Webster, formerly with the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, he's retired. He's going to be talking about the totally awesome Virginia opossum, a natural and cultural history of our only native marsupial. That should be really, really fun. So we hope that you can be here on Tuesday, October 7th. Again, right here, 7 o'clock. So to meet Harvey, and I don't think he'll bring any opossums. Or, well, maybe he'll find one on the road. Sorry. Oh, by the way, but, by the way, he does talk about a recipe for opossum. And I looked in the book, in the cookbook, and yes, it is there. So if you really want to figure out how to cook an opossum, we'll do the recipe. No dead skunks. Good. All right. All right, but this evening, I'm really, really excited to learn about the Birdman of Oberlin, Lynds Jones. Diana Steele is an avid birder, writer, and a member of the Black River Audubon Society. Let's go to the next slide. I just love her bio. She's been a science writer for more than 30 years, avid birder, birding in all 50 states and on 6 continents. Diana has 2 children who are also birders, and they've traveled to nearly every country she has. I love some of the adventures she's had too. So noted in her travels to the South Pole for work that the best part of the trip was the flight back to McMurdo from the South Pole, where I was the only passenger in the Navy C-130. The officers in the cockpit invited me to sit in a more comfortable seat and then let me take the controls as we flew over the Transantarctic Range. Then, when birding in China in 2019, for one day, we had the same guide as Noah Stricker, author of Birding Without Borders, who saw over 6,000 species in one calendar year. But we got one species he did not, the ibisbill, which lives high in the Himalayas. The ibisbill is the only member of its family, making it a top target for birders who are trying to see all 250 families of birds in the world. An active volunteer with Black River Audubon Society. She's a birding guide on the Lake Erie Islands and former board member of the Ohio Ornithological Society. So let's give a warm welcome to Diana Steele. Oh, there you go.
Hi, everyone. I am about to share, but you don't see it. Why not? I don't know why it's not showing up on this screen. Oh, that would help. I'll stop and then start again. Okay. Hello, everyone. I live in Oberlin, Ohio, for the last 21 years, and I learned some things about Oberlin in 2018. Oh, I have to do this. Okay, now it's not advancing. It was working earlier, I promise.
Maybe
I can try that.
unplug it and plug it back.
Sorry.
It's okay. Yes.
Oh, you know what? I probably have to.
Right, try it. So make sure the focus is on your presentation and not on the Zoom meeting, because there's nothing it wants. Why, how do I click on this? All right, so
I
now,
guess I'm just gonna have to do.
so
click.
try it now, try it now. There you go.
Okay, I need my.
Oh.
So I've been an avid birder for a really long time. And I did not know that the first big day where somebody saw over 100 species in a single day happened in Oberlin. I didn't even know that until 12 years after I moved there. But Ken Kaufman posted this meme on Facebook, and I thought, well, that's really interesting. I want to learn more about these people. Let me Google them, and I'll find the book, and I'll check it out of the library. So I did that, and there are no books. The closest thing I could find was a blog post about Lynds Jones, where they called him the most influential birder no one has ever heard of. So I took that and ran with it. And I found that he left a really important legacy to ornithology and to birding and to ecology. He taught the first collegiate course in ornithology. He founded the Wilson Ornithological Society and its journal, which are still active today. And he co-wrote The Birds of Ohio in 1903. For recreational birding, birding was not a hobby in the 19th century. He kind of encouraged people to observe more of the birds around them, and he published their sightings in his journal, which now we would think of as like the Cornell laboratory eBird, is where the everyday person publishes their sightings of birds that they see. And his journal was, in a sense, kind of like that in the early days. As I said, he did the first big day. He also did the first Christmas bird count 3 years before we think of the first bird count. And I will tell you more about that. And he was perhaps the first lister because he kept an obsessive list of all of the birds that he saw anywhere at any time during his entire life. So he also founded the first Department of Ecology. He conducted some of the first ecology field trips, which were absolutely epic, and I'm going to tell you about those at the end of my presentation. He mentored women in ecology and essentially was one of the pioneers of the field, and we don't even think of his name associated with that, even with or with birding or ornithology. I'm going to start with ornithology. He was born in Ohio in Ashtabula. His father was in the militia. He was a captain in the militia, but his wife really did not want him to go fight in the Civil War because she was home with young children and he would have left his family. So when the war ended and war heroes were returning to Ashtabula, he did not want to be around. He took his family and moved to Grinnell, Iowa, and they bought a farm, and that's where Lynds grew up. His father was apparently not the world's best farm manager, so the children all had to help out and do chores and sort of hire out to other people, other farmers. And Lynds was taught when he was 7 years old how to collect bird eggs. And at that time, you could sell bird eggs for quite a pretty sum. And by the time he was 25 years old, he had collected himself or traded to amass a collection of 250 species of birds. This, is that the pointer? Nope. I'm not sure what that did. Pointer? No. No, I didn't want to do that. Well, these eggs I found in the Ohio State collection, ornithology collection. I was able to find some of the specimens that he collected because they were sold from Oberlin College in the 1960s to Ohio State. But this is an alder flycatcher nest of eggs that he collected in Lorain County. When he was still in Grinnell, there was a nationwide society called the Agassiz Association. Has anyone here heard of the Agassiz Association? Yeah, Louis Agassiz was a naturalist who's somewhat viewed unfavorably these days because of his views on race. But he was a consummate natural historian. And his view of natural history was the more you learn about nature, the closer you are to God. So the Agassiz Association motto was per naturam ad deum. And so this was like scouting for natural history. It was young people, and they formed clubs geographically. There were 2 clubs in Grinnell. One was the older kids, Lynds and some of his neighbors, and then the younger kids later formed a club, and the kids were like 10. They collected things like bird eggs and skulls, rocks, anything. They published this newsletter called the Grinnell Agassiz Notes. Seems to be maybe half a dozen a year, handwritten, tabloid size. I don't know how many copies they made, but there's a copy of a few issues in the Oberlin College archives, and I found them just absolutely fascinating. In 1887, Lynds Jones was listed as the managing editor on this issue, and he pretty much held some sort of editorial position from then until for the rest of his life. As I said, Agassiz Association was initially organized geographically. They had state conferences. They published a journal. This is one of the contributions from the Grinnell Agassiz Association to the Swiss Cross. But in 1888, some of the younger ornithologists and oologists, people who liked to study bird eggs, wanted to form a chapter that wasn't geographic in nature, but it was interest-based. And they started publishing their own journal. Everything was by correspondence because they were living all over the United States, and they would send in their observations, publish them in their shared journal. This eventually became the Wilson Bulletin, and then the Wilson Journal of Ornithology in 2005. When you have a small club, you probably know this, you have to wear a lot of hats. In 1890, they held an election, members entitled to vote 11 or 15, only 11 people voted, but they voted Lynds Jones as president. He was also the recording secretary who tabulated the votes, the acting treasurer, and he wrote the letter from the incoming president to the journal, and he also published the journal. He held a lot of offices. He was a tremendous contributor to the Wilson Ornithological Society. You can see here how many years he was editor. In 1890, he had by this time been studying at Grinnell College for a couple of years, but his Aunt Mary, who lived in Oberlin, she was married to General Giles Shirtliff, who was then the treasurer of Oberlin College, wrote and said, I know you're really interested in natural history. Oberlin has a more science-based curriculum than Grinnell. Maybe you want to transfer here for your last 2 years. And so she agreed to sponsor him, and he ended up coming from 1890 to 1892, graduated, and then he became the curator of the college's Museum of Natural History. In 1895 or 1892, he said, hey, I'd really like to teach a class on ornithology, but the board said, no one would be interested in that. It ended up becoming the most popular class at the college. He had as many as 140 students, and he conducted labs 6 days a week. On Saturdays, it was the hardcore students. He got his PhD from the University of Chicago, and at that point started looking for jobs elsewhere. In the meantime, he teamed up with one of his students, William Leon Dawson. I think he might go by Leon, but I'm not sure. He graduated a few years after Lynds Jones, and credited Lynds for teaching him the beauty and variety of bird music. At the time, there would have been no recordings, and so you would either in person talk to someone and tell them what the bird sounded like, or try to describe it in words in the journal, which he did. He was a musician, and so he was pretty good at describing bird sound. Dawson moved to Washington, where he became a pastor. He was a theologian, but he continued to correspond with Jones and travel with him. His egg collection was the basis of the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, and he was a co-writer with Lines of Birds of Ohio, but also Birds of Washington and Birds of California. They took an epic trip to the West Coast in 1900. They took the train across country, recorded the birds they saw wherever they went, published in the journal. They stopped in Pasadena to visit Lines' brother and sister, and he said he added the most number of birds to his life list in Los Angeles County. So if you haven't been there, recommend it. They crossed Lake Chelan by steamboat in Washington, hiked up in the mountains, and then they had a disaster one day when they were out collecting specimens and observing birds. They had left their fire a little bit too, it was smoldering, and they didn't realize it, and it caught fire, destroyed their packs, ruined their specimens. The arsenic from the specimens spoiled their food, and they had basically nothing except what they were carrying with them at the time, which they still had their guns. They got tired of hiking, and they built a homemade raft, and they floated down the Skagit River. When they got to civilization, no one believed their story. But they recorded all the birds they saw. He kept track of all the miles he traveled, 7,000 miles, 309 species, 14 states. I found this treasure quite recently in Oberlin College biology department. This is the journal of the birds from that trip, and somewhere between those 2 days was the fire, but he didn't make any mention of it in this journal, but clearly he had it with him because it didn't burn. As I said, 1903, they co-wrote Birds of Ohio. It is not a field guide. It's 671 pages, 2 volumes. The writing is unbelievably beautiful. I highly recommend. You can find it online. Just Google. The descriptions of the species, of course, they're the same species that we see today in Ohio, but each one has like 2-3 pages devoted to it. And Dawson unfortunately died before he could complete the revised version. His son, to whom he dedicated the book, later took Lynds Jones' ornithology class, having dropped out of theology to do that. And Lynds wrote a letter to his wife saying, if his father finds out about it, it's not my fault. The next Birds of Ohio wasn't published until 1989. Yeah. Switching gears to recreational birding. The Big Year, my favorite movie. So they weren't calling it a big day, of course, back in 1898, but I want to just take you through that day. I found his diary from that day. Dawson and I went out to South Woods at 3:15 a.m., stayed till 7:30, came home to breakfast, took 8:30 car, reached Lorraine at 9:45, walked to Oak Point on the beach part of the way, then home across country. Reached home at 8:30 p.m., recorded 102 species of birds. I figured they walked about 20 miles, and they took the train from Oberlin to Elyria and then Elyria to Lorraine. It's 4 miles from Lorraine to Oak Point on the beach, and then it's 10 miles along Beaver Creek back to Oberlin. Pretty impressive. So now, big days, big weeks, big years, they're something that we just do. But next time you do a big day or you participate in the biggest week, think about Lynds Jones. Christmas bird count. How many people here participate in the Christmas bird count? I know Western Cuyahoga is, yeah, Nancy. So in 1897, this is again from his diary, Dawson and I took the bird census of 2/3 of town within the 3/4 mile limit. This is in Oberlin, so I drew the circle of the 3/4 mile, or the red circle is mine. There are dotted circles for 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. They recorded 16 species, 74 individuals, and 10,000 English sparrows. I think they were actually more of a problem then than they are now. They wrote it up in the Wilson Bulletin with some very colorful writing. And at the very end of the article, he says to try it. So he really wanted other people to do it too, to fill in the usual winter blank with notes second to none in point of interest. So Frank Chapman, who would have known Lynds Jones and would have probably read this journal, took up the challenge, and in 1900 proposed a national Christmas bird count, and Lynds was one of 27 participants who mailed their reports to BirdLore for publication the following February, which this was dubbed the first Christmas bird count, but actually it was Lynds' fourth. In 2024, 83,000 people in 2,600 15-mile diameter count circles throughout the Americas tallied over about 1/4 of the world's known bird species and 43 million birds, which sounds like a lot until you realize it's half as many birds as 50 years ago when we had half as many count circles and half as many counters. And the Christmas bird count data is used to guide conservation efforts now. Ecology. I'm going to introduce you to another one of his friends, Althea Sherman. Does anybody know who Althea Sherman is? She was another Oberlin College graduate, and she was the first person to study the nesting cycle of chimney swifts. So if you go to a talk by Judy Semrock, where she's talking about the history of chimney swifts, she talks about Althea Sherman, and you see a picture of her chimney swift tower. Well, she was an Oberlin College graduate, and she was a teacher until she had to go home to Iowa to take care of her parents, and she was pretty much not housebound exactly, but just did not leave the property very much. And she was a keen observer of birds. She hated house wrens, by the way. If anybody's a bluebirder, yeah, she has a lot to say about house wrens. She started writing letters to Lynds Jones, and he encouraged her to publish in the Wilson Bulletin. And her first article came out in 1905, Some Observations at Weedseed Inn. 1905 was the same year that Lynds Jones got his PhD from the University of Chicago. And he sold his house in Oberlin, preparing to find a job somewhere else. And Althea did not want that to happen. So she urged Oberlin College to endow a professorship in ornithology, for which she provided $600 in seed money. And she lobbied the trustees, she lobbied alumni, she lobbied students, she even lobbied Congress and this US senator who happened to be Lynds's uncle. So I found this letter in the Oberlin College archives. It was not indexed as being important. There was a whole folder of correspondence from Althea Sherman, and the library had just done a big display about her because she's a famous alumna, and they didn't know about these letters. So she writes to him. She had visited him the previous winter. She came to Oberlin. She said, "I hope the subject connected with the welfare of Oberlin College, in which I've been deeply interested, is being satisfactorily settled." And again, she lobbied everyone. But she goes on to say, in April, I visited Minnesota. In Northfield, I found all my friends were studying birds. This means that in a few years, our colleges will give more attention to the study, and Oberlin ought not to lose her leading position in the work being done in that line. Althea Sherman. Unfortunately, her lobbying efforts were not successful, and she chose to take the $600 of seed money and pay a third of Lynds's salary if he would stay at Oberlin College, which he did. He eventually had a split with the chair of the Department of Zoology, which was the department that he was in, and he was given his own department, and he wanted to call it Animal Ecology. It was the first department of animal ecology anywhere in the United States. But Oberlin College decided to lose her leading position and dropped all of that from the curriculum when he retired at 65 in 1930. I want to show this. This is one of Althea Sherman's articles. She built nest boxes for the northern flicker in the side of her barn, and then she would every day go in and check the status of the nests. She was like Julie Zickafoos, way 100 years earlier, and she would take the nestlings out and weigh them and draw them, put them back in, and take all these notes. And she published, or the Wilson Bulletin published, like this 40-page article about northern flickers, and she had asked Lynds Jones, "I'm not a trained ornithologist. I don't know what people know about flickers. Do you think this would be of interest?" And he said, "Well, of course. You know more about northern flickers than anyone at this point." And he wrote an introduction to this, which he called out the difference between studying an organism in its natural environment and collecting a specimen and trying to place it into the taxonomic order. And he said, we can't understand taxonomy if we don't understand the organism in its natural environment. And again, he was like, try it. He wanted everyone to do ornithology like this rather than collecting specimens and comparing them. So this was a kind of shift, a shift also around 1918 away from collecting and trading eggs and feathers, and with the International Migratory Bird Treaty Act, So this was along those lines and continuing more in that direction. He started leading ecology field trips for his students in 1910. In the first 4 years, he held ecology summer school somewhere on Lake Erie. In each of those 4 years, it was a different location for 6 weeks. How's my time? Okay. In 1915, 1916, he wanted to replicate the trip that he had took with Dawson, minus the disaster. And so he led a 6-week field trip to the West Coast by train. And then after the First World War, they switched to automobiles because you'd have a little more flexibility in determining where you want to go and how long you want to spend and how much detail you want to observe. And I was really surprised at how many women took part in these trips, like way more women than men. I want to tell you about the first trip, which was in 1915. The Oberlin College archivist put me onto the journal that this woman kept. She not only had a journal and maps, but she also had a photo album. And she chronicled the whole journey. They went from, they went from Seattle. Well, they took the train to Seattle, but then they got aboard a ship and they sailed up through the Strait of San Juan de Fuca to the tip right there, where there's a Native American tribe living. Then they boarded ocean-going canoes with Native American guides and went to islands where birds were nesting, like puffins. They camped and fished and studied the bird life. That was their trip. So here's a photo of the beginning of the trip. Here we all are. I never successfully count how many women there are versus how many other people, but it's way more than half women. That's Enid herself. This is leaving Nia Bay with their ocean-going canoes and one of their campsites where Professor Jones is in the kitchen. And she notes that this was a hard landing. Picture fails to show how rough it was. And here's some of the photographs that she took. Absolutely amazing for the time, 1915. In the background of this picture, you can see the kind of camera that she would have had. It was like they call it a Kodak pocket folding camera. But everything was film and large format. And I believe this is Lynds' son, George Jones. Does anybody here know who George Jones is in Oberlin? George became famous in Oberlin. He lived over 100 years. He was an ecologist, and he led Sunday afternoon ecology walks for decades. And people in Oberlin still remember him because he lived until 1998. So that's George in 1915. The second year, they decided to buy a 1-ton truck and pack all of their provisions and camp supplies in that. But it turned out to be more trouble than it was worth because it was too heavy for the roads and it was much slower than the automobiles. Typically, they bought new cars in Ohio, drove to the West Coast, sold them, rode the train back. And then the next year, after saying to George, I'm never ever going to do this again, he would decide in about February, oh, okay, I want to do it again. And altogether, he led 13 of these ecology field trips. The 1-ton truck only lasted one trip. I recently got this photo from one of Lynds' great-granddaughters, who were George's granddaughters, who drove from Massachusetts to Ohio to hear one of my talks. And Renata sent me this photo, and I have no words. I love it. But as you can imagine, there were a lot of problems with early automobiles. And now I am going to treat you to the journal of the 1922 summer ecology field trip, which was kept by Grace Fern Cowling. She was one of the first women in Ohio to receive a degree in ecology in 1923. In fact, Oberlin College graduated 3 students in animal ecology that year, and they were all women. So with the traveling by automobile, they took whatever route they wanted, and she was able to document the botany and the change in the kind of landscape as they traveled. They went through, I don't know which was the first way, the southern or the northern route, but then they did a loop down to Pasadena. They stopped in Utah and picked up Lynds' brother Marcus. And Marcus was a foremost, like one of the foremost botanists of the United States. He lived in Utah, and they pick him up, and he finished the trip with them. Here's some of the problems they had with the cars, and I later read that this was like not just every few days, but like several times a day. They would run out of gas, they had a flat tire, they would break a connecting rod. There was a flaw in one of the automobiles that George, he sort of became the mechanic. He found that there were these springs that would break, and they were just weak springs in the Ford automobiles, and he started buying springs by the pocketful, and he would replace them as soon as the car stopped running. And of course, there weren't bridges, there weren't often ferries, so they're fording the river. Here they're replacing a connecting rod in George's car. One year, Lynds' car, the steering mechanism decoupled as he was driving on a steep mountain road, and he couldn't make the turn, and the car drove straight off the side. And fortunately, they weren't traveling very fast. It was broken by a boulder. George came in the car behind them and realized they were tire tracks going off the side of the road, and he happened to look down. Oh, hi, Dad. So they had to haul the car back up. They had to send to the West Coast for supplies and wait for it to come by train. They repaired the car, and then they kept going. If you've ever traveled out west, the scenery might look familiar to you. I've been to both the Badlands and Cedar Breaks. I have pictures that look exactly like that, except in color. But the people are dressed a lot differently. Here's some examples of all the women, like Greta Penfound, Glad in the middle of the Joshua Tree, Gladys, Greta, Grace, Louise, Genevieve, and then George and Lynds Jones. They also like to have a little bit of fun. Although I wouldn't recommend handling a pelican like that. That is the only picture of Grace in her album. She was a little shyer than Enid. I also got this picture from Renata Green, its great-granddaughter. The only man in this picture is Lynds Jones. And they are fording a river. Mrs. Beck, Professor Lynds Jones, Eleanor Worthington, Naomi Unkofer, Ruth Robinson, Mary Burwell, Margaret Yoakum. Mary Burwell, by the way, married George Jones and is Renata's grandmother. I was initially asked to give this talk to the Oberlin Heritage Center, and I'm extremely grateful that they gave me the opportunity to really dive into the archives and to put this story together. I also give thanks to Rick Wright for that blog post that got me started, and the Jones family papers and the Enid Bancroft, Sutton, and Grace Cowling papers in the Oberlin archives were incredibly valuable. This is age 71, his 54th board car. It wasn't his last. This was his last. George took this photo of his 1946 Ford. I do not know what number Ford that was, like number 60 or whatever. There was another photo that Renata gave me. I have 2 talks scheduled in February and April. I am available if you know of anybody who would be interested in hearing this talk. I would be happy to speak to their group. And I will have a PS. This is a photograph from the Birds of Ohio of the South Woods. I know Nancy has been there. This is the Oberlin Preserve. Has anybody else been to the Oberlin Preserve / South Woods? Yes, I hear you nodding. Okay. They weren't really photographing birds in 1903, but they were photographing the places that they saw birds. This they called Warbler Corner in the South Woods, and I thought, this must be gone because they logged that. But recently, they have improved the trail at the South Woods, and now there is a crushed stone path that leads to this kingly oak, and it goes through a stand of oaks on the edge of the prairie that are at least as large as the Warbler Corner oaks. And when I have visited the last couple of weeks, the trail is just finished. I have seen lots of sparrows, baby sparrows, not house sparrows, but like field sparrows and song sparrows and house wrens. And I'm excited to be able to visit Warbler Corner, if that's what it is, during spring migration. And I invite any of you to also come. It's a very short drive from here. Any questions? Yes. Oh, we want to pass the mic, right?
Hello, hello.
Okay.
Who had the question? Oh, I went the wrong way.
Okay, yeah. Hold on. All right, yeah, that, remember I said.
Hi there. I wondered if Allison was the science librarian at Oberlin, helped you with any of your research? She was my choir buddy in the musical union.
I am also a musical union singer,
Oh,
as was Lynds Jones.
oh, wow.
I actually read one year what he was preparing, and it happened to be the same piece of music that we were doing. Now I can't remember what it was,
Wow.
but it was like when they sang it, it was close to being the world premiere, and we sang it 100 years later.
Wow.
It was amazing. No, Allison was not the librarian who helped me, but yeah, she was my friend, and I did spend a lot of time with her, and I miss her.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom? Oh, here's one other person. Oh,
He spent his whole career at So he spent his whole career at Oberlin?
Yes,
And did-
aside from studying at University of Chicago.
And did he come to any kind of national acclaim? Did anyone at the time, did they know who he was? Did any other, natural sciences organizations notice what he was up to? And
Well, he published in the ecology journals, and they did a really nice write-up of him when he died. So yeah, they were aware. He was going to national conferences, and he was the editor of this prominent journal. It's just been just enough time for us to forget, because we haven't been telling his story over the last 100 years.
thank you.
anyone else here? Anyone online have a question? I was going to ask about the vehicles. There weren't gas stations like on every corner at that time. So I was curious about, where they got their gas. I'm sure they
Right.
could pile in a bunch of those tires some way, somehow. But, yeah.
Yeah, that's a question I don't know the answer to. But I'm sure it's written down somewhere. There's loads of the archives that I haven't even gotten to yet.
And especially out west, here in built up, East Coast at that time built up, yeah. But West was still,
Oh,
wow,
yeah.
wild.
Oh, yeah. In the archives are two documents that I've only partially gotten through. George wrote an 800-page biography of his father. 800 pages. Day by day. It's basically those diary entries and a little bit of context. And not even broken down by year. So I've been having to go and like mark, okay, this is 1924. And then, but he writes about like the meetings with Althea Sherman and the letters that what she wanted to do. And George wrote an autobiography. You know, he never published a single scientific paper in his entire life, even though his dad was the editor of a journal. But he wrote a 4,000-page autobiography,
Oh,
which
my.
would, if you published it, would be like 20 volumes. I haven't begun to read it.
No, we haven't, yeah. Light reading.
Yeah, but he would have the answer to that question.
Anyone else? No, I guess not. Well, I'm sure if you do have another question that just pops into your mind, I'm sure Diana would be happy to answer that. This has been fantastic. And I guess I got the information about your program from Kirtland Bird Club, that you had done a program, and Marianne was just saying, this is a very different presentation from what you did for Kirtland Bird Club.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I
So-
guess I tell slightly different stories each time.
Which is fine. Yep, yep. This is fascinating, just the history that we have in Ohio and how progressive Oberlin has been and hopefully still is. But yeah, this has been fabulous. Thank you ever so much. We really appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.